we decided we wanted a sailboat, period. So the question became which brand and
Right.
what type. So we chartered boats in different areas in the
Med,
Med.
Tahiti.
and Tahiti. I think one of them came pretty close. The one we chartered in the Med came closest to what we wanted. It's 32 feet. It wasn't a Pearson, but it was like a Pearson. But we finally decided on a Pearson 323. That's the one we wanted. It met all of our requirements.
And so we went from there to that and found a second-hand one. Ward had sold his business to a firm called West Company. So we were rolling in money, right? So we decided to call it West Wind.
That makes sense. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, look at you're agreeing now.
And we were messing around on our boat at the San Francisco Yacht Club, which is based in Tiburon, and these guys went by and said, "Hey, that boat looks like ours."
That's right.
Oh.
That's right.
And you were on your boat?
We were
On
on the
the
boat.
boat,
We
right.
said,
I
"Hey,
remember
maybe
that.
we should get together," shouting.
Yeah.
You didn't get off. We didn't intermingle. They said to come over to Gas House Cove, and we set a date. And
We
yes, it
went
was.
over,
Right.
and Paul was standing there waiting for us. So Margaret grabbed a line and threw a line at him.
Yeah.
And he grabbed the line,
I pulled.
and it pulled, and it was not tied
Attached.
down.
So
And he went back
I went
over.
backwards into the water.
Well, he didn't laugh, I'll tell you.
Not then.
I thought we were done right there.
Not possible.
I was the creature from the Black Lagoon.
I don't know, or did you pull him out? How did you get
She
out?
apologized since I
You
got
were
a
on the
hug
boat.
from
We didn't get out. We
Margaret, and
got
that
out
started
on
things
our own.
off.
You must have-
correctly.
So
I
you must have
knew
pulled
all was
yourself
well
up.
when Paul said, "Come get some grog."
Next time we were with Margaret and Ward, I said, we're going to leave San Francisco and we're just going to go wandering on a boat. We go to Mexico and then we don't know what. And then Ward said, well, we're going to go with you.
Well, look, we bought a boat. What are we going to do with it? Just sail the bay? I don't think so.
Yeah.
And so just go down to Santa Cruz and back? I don't think so. So we thought, well, let's just go. But we didn't want to go alone. And somebody made a quip when I mentioned this and said, well, why don't you just tie your boat on behind them and they'll pull you.
And what was the name of your boat?
St. Brendan.
St. Brandon. Yeah.
Brendan.
Brendan is an important name to remember because it's quite famous.
Because Brendan was the saint of navigation.
That's right.
We left,
Cruising,
we
isn't
threw flower petals into the bay as we went out under the bridge, and we said, we're on our way. Next thing you know, Ward calls me on the radio, and he says, hey, Paul, he says, my engine's overheating. So we did a 180, and we came back, and we went to the marina at Fort Point.
Yeah.
Then we took off.
As you were heading south, did you know what your next stop would be?
You know what? You need to approach this with who gives a darn?
Really?
Because that's the way we did it.
Yeah. But we knew
We weren't going to die. I mean, we weren't rushing out there to drown or anything
no,
like
but
that.
you do hops. You know where you're going to go on your next hop.
And you
know,
basically know how
so
far it is
we
and
were
what your
going
speed
to
is
Monterey.
and what
Right.
time you
Yeah.
It is
enter.
not like an ocean
Yeah.
journey where you have no orientation, visual
Yeah.
orientation. We constantly were in sight of land.
Right.
Yeah, so
That's a
I
big
guess it was
difference.
Monterey was our,
Yeah.
Exactly.
I distinctly
And we
remember
could have. We could have.
Ward and I searching out
Ooh.
which bakery had the best eclairs,
That's
chocolate
right.
eclairs.
That's
You
right.
remember that?
Yes.
Yeah.
Now that
Okay.
you mention
And
it.
so we cleaned the whole city out of chocolate eclairs. I think we ate every single one.
how we acquired food was having a boat with lots of storage on it for canned goods. And then you buy a little cookbook called Can to Pan, horrible recipes in it.
Well, we all approached it differently. We took off with a lot of dry goods. We didn't do cans, so we had basics, your flour, rice, and seasonings. I remember doing all the spices so we could make things interesting. So it was a transition from those things to what the local people would eat. So we would pick up, of course, the first thing in Mexico is tortillas, right? So you start eating like the locals, and it's surprising how little money you spend. And this is how a lot of people do it on a shoestring.
You fish too.
That's
Yeah.
important.
Right.
That's the big
that's
thing.
a
That's a
very
big
big
thing.
thing.
We reeled out maybe 50 feet or 100 feet, I don't know.
That was a lot.
Yeah,
That was a
yeah,
lot.
at least
Yeah.
that.
It
You
had
were-
bait
you
on
did,
it.
because you were a good fisherman.
Yeah, you
And
did
then-
that.
I'm not.
You drag that behind you, and all of a sudden you'd notice it went up to the surface, and that meant you had something on there, and you'd pull it in, and so you
Were
got
you
it
using a rod and reel? Or,
Never.
So you used like a yo-yo kind of thing, or
No,
what
we
was
wrapped
it?
it around the
The winch?
yeah.
Oh, okay. What kind of line were you using then? Like just
It
really
was
heavy
nylon-
line?
It was heavy
nylon
nylon
line,
line.
and,
Yeah,
Interesting.
yeah, okay. Well, anyway, we're listening to a good story here, though.
but here you are,
Wait,
you bring this
stop
fish
that
in,
finger pointing.
and the fish is bouncing around and putting blood all over the cabin. So to stop that, you take vodka or something like that and
Right.
pour it in her gills,
Yeah.
and that's the end of it. You
Just
only clean
stops
your
it.
boat
Yeah,
once,
stuff it.
and then you learn the lesson.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
To,
Oh.
Oh, I
Knock
think
'em
that's
out.
why we didn't fish. We didn't learn
Oh.
that lesson.
We all survived eating. I was seasick.
Oh.
And so, well, no one knew it, but I knew I would be seasick because I was very car sick. So I went to a doctor before I left, and I said, I really would like to conquer this, and she gave me what is known as scopolamine, a patch you put behind your ear, and it worked like a charm.
That's right, 'cause
So that's just kind of an aside from
I-
food, because I wouldn't have eaten it.
I would say that when we were out overnight and we had to prepare a meal, if you wanted something a little more than, peanut butter and bread, that was the challenge. That would be the most difficult thing, especially for some of us who were out for a couple of days.
Yeah, well, you had one-pot
Um,
meals.
One-pot
And
meals.
because you didn't eat at regular hours, you might not
Yep.
even eat at the same time.
No.
Somebody's on watch, and you get hungry, and the other one's
Right.
sleeping, so you
The way we worked our sleeping schedule when we were doing the watches at night was 2 on and 2 off. So somebody was up in the cockpit sailing the boat, which had an auto helm, so Otto was doing his job, and they just were there in case of an emergency. The other one was down there snoozing. 2 hours would be up, switch. During the daytime, when we're both up, there's no schedule.
Right.
Everybody has
Mhm,
a
their
different
own.
way of running that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Some of
I
us
mean,
were
your
able
boat,
to
you
do
ran your
longer.
boat differently than
yeah,
than we
we were
ran ours.
completely different.
Everybody
Yeah,
does something
yeah.
different.
I would be on watch till exhaustion.
Okay.
Okay. Yeah.
I usually had that watch where I could look at the stars from sometime around 2 until 5 in the morning.
No,
That's
no,
about what it was.
No, it wasn't. That was,
Well, you really learned a lot about the heavens, you might say.
Oh, they were gorgeous, yes.
To sit there and watch the full moon, half of a moon,
Yeah, right.
yeah, exciting times. Also, got to test some things that you've been reading about. For example, the angle between the horizon and the North Star is your latitude. And that's kind
That's
of
where the
interesting.
sextant comes in.
That's where you don't need a sextant to figure that out. But it gives you a pretty good idea of where you are, latitude-wise. And some sailors in the old days used to do what they call latitude sailing. In other words, they would go to the proper latitude and then go around our Earth and to find
that latitude.
to find a place. As you're going down the coast, eventually you get into Cabo,
San Lucas.
Cabo San Lucas, and you park your boat, anchor it, Then we had to go to the airport to pick up Hank for our trip from there to Puerto Vallarta.
Cabo is a peninsula. Puerto Vallarta is the westernmost mainland. However, I have to have this one caveat. We use the term sailing terribly loosely because we sailed with sails up relatively little. We mainly motored.
So we went across to Puerto Vallarta, and Hank had to go to a hotel to check,
To
reconfirm his reservations. And we saw some of our old friends there.
We had been to Puerto Vallarta before, both of us. So we knew where we wanted to go, and it's really massively changed since then. They made it very shishi, but at that point in time it was a little more casual.
Our most harrowing adventure was not on our boat, but we chartered a boat in the Caribbean with some friends of ours. It was 4 of us plus a guide. And as we were taking off from St. Vincent, it said that there was a hurricane coming called Hurricane Allen. So we hustled our bustle and got into Admiralty Bay.
Admiralty.
Yeah.
And Beckway.
In Beckway. Yeah. And prepared for the worst. We double anchored and did all the things you do. Well, about 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock, the storm hit. And I mean, it hit. We took a boat called the
Friendship Rose.
Friendship Rose and
Wooden
smashed
boat.
into our boat.
A very heavy boat.
And it took everything on one side of the boat and
All the stanchions and everything.
threw it over to the other side of the boat. It was terrible. It turns out that one of the ladies could not swim and was petrified.
She was terrified. So Ward was the hero. He said, "Come here, Barbara, I have something to tell you." Now the 2 boats are going like this, and she's saying, "Yes, Ward, yes, Ward." And he grabs her by the arm and pulls her over onto the boat.
So, but then what happened?
When Margaret was coming across, she slipped and fell into the water.
That's
Yeah,
it.
between what and what?
The 2 boats.
And the boats we're being shoved by Friendship Rose. She's over here on my backside. The pointy end of the boat is here. And I'm trying to go from one to the next over stanchions. And our stanchions were wiped out, but theirs weren't. And just about the time I stepped over, the boats pulled apart, just enough for me to go down into the water.
It was a very dangerous situation.
It was dangerous from his standpoint, for sure.
Very-
So then they had to hold the boat so that he could help me get back out. And it is very hard when you're wet and you're trying to grab a hold of something that's moving to keep yourself going.
Trying to get her out was
Timing.
the trick.
Yeah, right.
So I grabbed her hair.
I had a really fuzzy hairdo, and he grabbed me by my hair, and I was able to grab a hold of the stanchion and get up.
Wow.
So the next day, it all calmed down.
Right.
And
It's like a bad dream.
No.
No.
everybody
We were still
had
in our nightgowns.
nightgowns except me. I wore my regular clothes.
I don't know why you went to bed that night dressed, but you did, and I was annoyed by that.
So we're walking down the beach, and
I'm in a nightgown.
everybody is dressed in their night outfits except me. Boy, did I feel great. But the interesting thing was the reaction of the people who had been washed on shore. And
I mean, mind you, we're foreigners, and most of the people on the boats are foreigners in this particular situation. And the natives deal with this all the time, right? Well, I don't know that bad of a hurricane, but whatever. And so they would come and try to help you right your boat. Well, some of the captains were very offended by that. And I thought, how rude, because it was so nice of them to help
Absolutely.
us. And so they helped us, we allowed them to help us in our boat and everything. And we had, got a hotel for the night and some clothes and whatever. But all because we were not telling them what to do, they were helping us.
Yeah, because they're very efficient people. The
Oh,
Beckwayans.
yes, they are.
I know. They have a
they're
huge
unique.
history.
The Beckwayans are unique.
Yeah, well, they were certainly sweet to us.
Ward and Margaret and Westwind have been with us all the way from Punta Arenas, and it is a great thrill to have finally made this goal at the start of the Panama Canal.
We arrived at the Panama Canal.
And if you remember the old song, I'm Chiquita Banana and I've come to say bananas have to ripen in a certain way.
And there's quite a bit of rigmarole, red tape that you have to go through. They have to, first of all, measure the boat, and they call it ad measure. It's a special set of measurements that they use to determine the cost. In our case, it was $120 to get through the canal. I understand today it could be $1,000. So Tuesdays and Thursdays are the day that we could go through.
Because it's a commercial situation, we're little dinky things, so they don't want us clogging up the canal.
So we picked Thursday. So we all met at the bottom. We had to have 4 line holders.
Handlers.
I guess handlers, yeah. So there was plenty of people available to do it for free. So we had a Canadian couple. We had some military people who lived in the area go through with us.
We are now in the first lock. What's the name of the lock?
Miraflores Lock.
This is the first Miraflores lock.
Miraflores Lock.
And we have line handlers.
Right.
There's Ward and Nancy up forward with Margaret. Ward and Margaret are handling the lines. Nancy is taking pictures. On the stern lines, we have 2 friends, Pete. Where did Mark go? Well,
Mark. Oh, he's taking up slack.
there he is. He's taking up some slack as we're raising the first Miraflores lock.
You go into the dock, the lock, and they close it off on all sides and fill it with water. And so you move up maybe 30 feet. Then they open it up to the next level and do the same thing. And using that technique, they go all the way from one
Sea
side
level.
of the canal to the other side.
Well, and we stopped at Lake Gatun. That's where most boaters do get to stop. And it's a huge lake up on the highlands, in the highlands of Panama.
The lock gates will now open. We've come up to the top of Pedro Miguel lock. And then we'll be going into one of the largest man-made lakes in the world, Gatun Lake. There the gates are opening. And when they're open, the line handlers will let go, and we'll be free to go into the lake.
And you always going to meet somebody up there. So we anchored there for the night and then went down the locks the same way, sailed off Lake Gatun, where they had closed it off. Then they drop us down, and then they open the lock and we go in, and then they drop us down some more. As opposed to filling it up, they're
Right.
dropping it out. So
Right.
it's just slightly different.
And you want to remember that before the canal was built, there was no such country called Panama. We being the
US.
Americans, the U.S., expropriated
It from Colombia.
the land from Colombia. Do you know what a mola is, folks? Well, a mola is layered cloth layers and then sewn together, so you have different colors, and then they take and start removing the top layer, and the design is in what you remove.
How many layers do you remove?
And it could be 3 layers, it could be 5 layers.
That's about it.
I guess that's about
Yeah,
it.
I've never seen any more.
But it's interesting, and they call it reverse applique.
And it's only done, we understand, by the Cuna Indians in Panama. Probably not, but that's what we hear.
So at any rate, we were off on this little island where they're showing their goods. There was a whole bunch of Indians there with their goods.
Women and children, not
Women
the guys.
and children only, no men. So I asked a lady there if she would mind if I took her picture. Well, she said, yes, that would be 70 cents for the one child and her. Well, I didn't have any money.
You had
I
$1.
had $1, but I didn't have any, because you don't
Showing,
carry
yeah,
it.
no coin, we didn't.
No coin, so anyway, so I brought out $1 and she recognized it and she said, un momentito. So she ran and grabbed two more kids and brought them out, plunked them out in front of me and said, okay.
In front of her, they were in front of
And
her.
so you took the picture.
Yes, I did.
Margaret took it and
She went away happy. I had not heard of the Rio Dulce until we got through the canal and someone happened to mention it. And I thought, oh, that sounds Sweet River. That sounds really good, doesn't it? So we thought we'd just go and see what it was like. Well, we did, in a way, what boaters call swallow the anchor. And that usually means you stay there forever. And there are people who have stayed there till they passed away. But we didn't. We unswallowed the anchor and went on up to St. Petersburg in 6 years. But it took us 6 years.
how we ended up at the marina. The entrance to the Rio Dulce is a little
Livingston.
town called Livingston. And so we went up the river where they had made several Tarzan movies. And eventually we got to Fronteras and Esmeralda Bay. Now, we pulled into Manana Marina and we had talked to them on the telephone or the radio, made reservations. Margaret had made reservations. So we arrived and we met Clyde Crocker, who was the owner of the marina. And I looked around and I saw it was a beautiful location, just beautiful. And so I said, this must be the best job in the world. He said, Ward, I hate this place. I just hate it. I said, why? He said, you can't make any money. You can't even get by. If it wasn't for my pension, I'd be starving. So I said, what would be a fair return for you, Clyde? He said, $1,500 a month. If I made $1,500, I'd be the happiest guy in the world. I said, I'll be back in a moment. So I went down and talked to Margaret. She said, let's do it. So we rented the marina for a year. Went back, gave him a check and said, here's your money. He says, you're kidding. And I said, not kidding. That's a good check. So then I went down 2 boats, and Barry and Daphne's boat said, are you going to be running the marina in Honduras? And they said, yeah, as far as we know, we're on. I said, how about here? They both said, yeah, let's do it. So we went back and gave them $1,500, and we had it for a year. And so we would work 3 months, and our friends would work 3 months. We alternated back and forth. And so and everything was there, even the bed sheets.
We also rented an apartment in Guatemala City, which I haven't mentioned. And an apartment in Guatemala City, and so when our 3 months off, we would sometimes go up there. And of course, there were other sailors who had also migrated up there and left their boats on the river, which is not uncommon. So we had a little social group going up there. And in Guatemala City, you could get anything, airline tickets mainly. And that's when Ward should talk about Riotel.
Well, we recognized that the big problem was communication
Between
the capital and the Rio Dulce. And so we decided to use our single sideband radios to transmit information from where we were on the Rio Dulce to the capital. And we had to buy a single sideband radio, and it was a 5-hour trip to the capital. So it worked out fine that we could make reservations for doctors and whatever else.
airline tickets, hotels, the works, but you didn't. The big advantage was it took 5 hours to get there. Then you had to make your appointment if you didn't have this communication. Then you might have to wait a day or 2 or 3. All the while you're off your boat and in a hotel. Money is being spent. So we would charge people so much per call, and we would be on the air for a certain time in the morning from 7 until 8. And they either got a hold of us or they didn't get a hold of us. And we had people on the river who were obviously had the single sideband down there. We made money. We gave Clyde his money every month that he wanted. Sure, and we made money for ourselves. Plus, we could, I enjoyed cooking. So did the other lady, and we had certain people who worked for us. We took over the people that had been working there, so it wasn't like we were doing all the heavy lifting or anything like that. We weren't. We had a television there, so of course when games were on and stuff like that, everybody came.
Oh, yeah.
It was fun,
Yeah.
That part was fun.
Right.
We got permission to import lobsters from Australia. And so we,
Why did we ask for them?
because they're freshwater lobsters that grew well in the tropics. And they were very popular in Australia. And we felt there might be a market for them,
And there was.
and it was in that area, the Rio Dulce. So we imported. Somebody did it for us. They imported the lobsters. We took over the running of the operation, and but we didn't get a chance to complete it because we decided to come home.
Well, one of the problems that existed was how to keep the lobsters in a local location, and we had cages for them. But they soon fouled their cages to the point where they were killing themselves. Follow what I'm saying? They're in too concentrated an area, and this is a problem we just simply never did solve. So it never went much beyond that at all. It was one of those ideas that just quite didn't happen.
What do you love about sailing?
Well, I think for one thing, you have to plan a lot, plan ahead, and be prepared. And that it was attractive, I think, to all of us.
Yeah.
We enjoyed the preparations.
For me, the wind in my hair. That's it.
First, for me, in the beginning, was a vehicle for travel. But of course, after I learned the nuts and bolts of it and really felt confident about sailing, then it was much like Margaret, feeling the wind on my face, going through the waves and being part of the sea, and especially at night with the stars and the phosphorescence of the boat going through the sea.
What I love about sailing is the challenge, learning all aspects from getting your finger chopped off and stick it
In the flywheel.
in the flywheel of the engine. When you,
Notice he still has the finger of it.
that one. Yeah, all up to navigation, learning navigation.
What lucky ducks we were!
Yeah, right. And I'm so glad that we did it.
Oh, yes.
No. Yeah, I'll
What
tell
do you
you.
think? Oh, he's got,
Camaraderie.
this is the picture of
Camaraderie.
Paul and Ward together.
Yeah, camaraderie.
And, there's
a common among
We call it
most
buddy
of us.
boating when we
Yeah.
would get together.
Yeah.
Yeah,
This
but
is
just-
a buddy
but just the
boaters.
sense of camaraderie.
Yeah.
I miss about being on the ocean at night, being alone in the cockpit, and it's below, and just being by myself, and just watching the water. Or the other thing would be when I miss that, you pick up a school of porpoises, and then sail, and they
I
go
think
along with you.
We're all
Yeah,
feeling
we all
the same
remember
thing.
that. Yeah, those porpoises were fabulous. They played with the boat. Go across and
So exciting.
play with the boat.
And I think for me, learning ground up, I was like a child learning a new language. So learning how to sail and then finally getting it. And so once I could do it all, then I really got into it. Really enjoyed that. So I do miss that.
I miss the freedom of it and the fact that, no telephone. Not that the telephone rings all that often, but I think I'm a loner to some extent, and I prefer being out there. I don't have to have 100 people around or even if there was
Yeah.
any. And Ward is a good companion, so between all those things, that I miss being there and being alone basically on the boat.
I would say similar.
Same with us too.
How about you, Big Guy?
Well, I miss the excitement. There's a lot of things going on, and you meet a lot of interesting people, a lot of crazy people, a lot of smart people, dumb people, all broke people, rich people.
Yep.
But I mean, I think it's just a fun thing.
This is Rio Dulce, 6 years, jumping off, Isla Mujeres, St. Petersburg, Florida.
Wow.
And the Sunshine Bridge, which is really quite attractive.
Yeah, it is.